I just think you're so amazing. Like we've only met a few times, like maybe the first time we actually ever had like a real conversation was the lunch with Nkechi.
The Archangel.
That was the first time we'd had a conversation. I remember I met you at Stefan Speaks.
Yes, you were sitting in front of me.
I was sitting in front of you, and I remember I was kind of like, okay, I don't know, because you never know when you see people on social media how they will be in real life. And so I was kind of like, I think that's her. Should I say something? Should I not say something? Should I say something? And then I said to you, hi, I really like your podcast. And you were just so sweet. I was like, all right, she's really nice. Anyway, for anybody who doesn't know how sweet and kind and generous and wonderful you are, tell me who you are and tell me what your name means.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we'll start with my name. My name is Makini Smith. Makini is Swahili for strength of character. My father has a thing for African names, so I think he may have about 21 children if I'm counting correctly. Yes, 21 I think. When I was 12, there was 15, and yeah. So, okay.
Lost count.
But most of his children have African names.
Oh, wow.
And I grew up with my parents telling me that my name meant beautiful one, and I believed them. And when people used to compliment me, and I'd say, yeah, it means beautiful one, and that would make me smile, it would make them smile, and, you know, my head would swell. And as I became an adult and I started to actually dig into mindset and understanding that a lot of the things that we learn when we're children were not the truth, that there's a lot that we actually have to unlearn and relearn. And sometimes a lot of the things that our parents tell us based on myths and superstitions and whatever they knew in their environment. And I did some digging and found out that my name did not mean beautiful one. So, it means strength of character. And in terms of what I do mindset coaching. I help people reach their peak potential, especially women. And we focus on owning your stories and conquering your fears so you can reach your goals.
I just want to go back to the name and say they were not wrong, though, to say beautiful one, because you are incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful not just from an external perspective, but your heart shines through and the beauty of that. That part, they
maybe that's what they
remixed
wanted
it a little bit.
That's what they wanted it to me. I'll give them that.
How do you think, though, that having that name, and once you found out that the meaning meant strength of character, how has that reflected itself? Because you know how sometimes they say that, you know, you give a child a name and that's who they become. How is that reflected in your life? Is it true of you?
I definitely feel that it's true of me. I mean, in terms of strength of character, if someone asked me to describe myself, strength may be one of the first things that I would say. So me being able to walk into the ownership of what my name actually means, going from thinking it meant beautiful one, something kind of superficial, and then finding out that it means strength of character, I definitely feel that I've walked into the ownership of that.
So tell me about some of the things that you've had to overcome, fight, all of that have led you to know that you have strength of character.
I mean, first of all, I grew up in government housing to a single mom, and she was working multiple jobs. She was hardly able to be home. And I felt like between my older siblings, my sister and my brother, and the community of other single moms that helped look after each other's children, I had to learn a lot the hard way. And I had to experience bullying, learning to fight back for myself, and being bullied by males. So learning to fight back for myself, learning to speak up for myself. And then when we moved out of government housing, my mom, worked her way out of there and decided to buy a house up in the town of Markham. And it was no longer that community, that sense of there's people looking out for each other. It was people who pulled into their driveway, went into their garage, went into their house, and you may never even know what they look like. And that kind of left me feeling a little lost. And I started to, I don't want to say get into too much trouble, but I started to, I guess, veer off onto a side path. And I ended up getting pregnant at 17. And it wasn't that I was promiscuous or anything. I was with my child's father from the time before I turned 15, actually. So we were together for 8.5 years. But being a teen mom, that was definitely something that was not easy to go through, especially in that time. And I was a tomboy at the time. It was a whole lot of stuff. But the school, they didn't want a pregnant teenager walking around the hallways. So being a straight A student on the honor roll and your school telling you can't stay here. So that was, a lot to deal with, and learning to deal with how society treated me. I'm sure that my family, as much as they are proud of me now, at the time, they were not happy. And I had to prove myself and prove that I was not going to be a statistic. I was not going to live off of welfare. I was not going to live off of them, that I was going to provide. And growing up, going through, after that point, after we had our second child, and going through a breakup and realizing at that point, what, I want to go to college. I need to go back to school, putting myself through school.
With two kids.
With two kids that were small. Mm-hmm. And I went back to college. I was working full-time and being a full-time single mom. So that was a lot. And I still managed to graduate from college with honors again. And after that, we split up when my second daughter was 5.5 months old. And that's when I met my next partner, which ended up being my husband. And we had another child. And that relationship eventually became a little toxic. It was very verbally and emotionally abusive. And I left the minute it got physical. I guess I should mention that, he's evolved from that point. So have I. We're both completely different people. But any type of relationship like that, being able to stay in that situation, obviously for 8.5 years, was a lot. And then I developed some health issues. They said that could have been triggered from certain things. So fibromyalgia and fibroids and all kinds of things that dealing with, chronic pain, dealing with extreme fatigue, dealing with all kinds of issues within my body. And then that led to depression and anxiety. And filing for a divorce, that was like, I was a stay-at-home mom for 5.5 years. Now what? And no one wanted to hire me. So I decided to become an entrepreneur. I thought, what could I do to still take care of my children full-time, but still be able to provide the amount of income that they had from a 2-parent home. So it was just a series of things. And I jumped straight into entrepreneurship, and I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years now, and still having to deal with a lot of life lessons and adversities. But I guess if we were to name some of the main ones, those were, I guess, what I would call the main ones. I guess there's a part of my inside that didn't want to mention it because I don't want to get emotional, but my sister passed away in 2012, and I became an entrepreneur in 2009, 2010. And when she passed away, that shifted everything in my life. That shifted how I viewed life, how I viewed people, how I viewed what I wanted my legacy to be, how I viewed what I did for my children. And I slowly started to shift professions. But that was, I guess, one of the biggest adversities despite everything else that I'd gone through.
One of the things that I so love about you, and on your platform, and we'll talk about your platform in a moment, is how you are so open and so vulnerable, and you share in real time. Sometimes in real time, I was watching one of your recent you were live, and you're sitting in your car and you're talking about how I'm having an anxiety attack right now. Why do you share what you share?
So I used to be, well, I could say I've always been known as someone who is open and transparent. Sometimes my transparency made other people uncomfortable. People would recall stories of when we were teenagers, and I would say what actually happened, and they're like, why would you say that out loud? But it's not that I was trying to be malicious. It's just I'm naturally transparent like that. And then after my divorce, and I started to study about vulnerability. And one of my leadership mentors, Carlin Purcell, she was obsessed with Dr. Brene Brown and her studying shame and vulnerability. And I actually learned how to connect on a deeper level with people by me being transparent about my own issues. Because people may look at the social media pictures and think, oh, wow, her life is perfect and all together. She's always, dressed to the nines. Her makeup's always done. Her eyebrows are on point. She's got beautiful children. Life is great. Like, her life is unattainable. But if they actually read the captions or watch the stories, I talk openly about everything, whether it be the issues with my children, whether it be the issues with business, with entrepreneurship, with relationships, with friendships. And I felt opening up about the anxiety issues is a big deal because a lot of people are struggling with mental health issues. A lot of people are struggling with a lot of issues on their own, in secret, feeling ashamed. And shame loves secrecy. And when I'm open about stuff like that, the amount of messages that I get from women saying, oh my God, thank you for sharing that. I thought I was alone. Oh my God, thank you for sharing that. I had no idea you were going through that. And then we become like regular accountability partners. I have one woman who reached out to me when I shared that video, and every single day we check on each other. How are you doing today? How are you feeling today? What can I help you with? So we create this community of connection through being vulnerable. And a lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable because they see it as a weakness. But I've learned that it's a strength.
You said something so powerful there, that shame loves secrecy. And so many of us suffer in secret because we're looking at the highlight reel, right? We're looking at the pictures on Instagram and everything looks perfect. And yet, so many of us are suffering. How have you been able to, how were you able to pull yourself out? Like, I'd imagine, like, you've got two young kids, or did you have 3 kids when you made the decision to divorce your husband?
Divorce, I had 3 kids at the time.
You have 3 kids. Where had you developed that strength of character to leave that? Because for so many, I know personally, many women who are in relationships, and for them it's like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, he's abusive. Yeah, whatever. But if I leave, and they're afraid of they'll leave. Yeah.
They're afraid of the unknown. And I think that my faith has actually played a huge part in me being able to walk by faith, not a blind faith. But a lot of people are afraid of what they don't know. And fear and faith are both beliefs in the unknown. So if you have a choice, if you can choose, why not choose faith? A lot of people live in fear, and they live in this place of uncomfortability because they don't want to experience what's next. I have people who have shared with me when I went open about my divorce that they were in that same situation. And that was almost 10 years ago, and they're still in that situation. And I'm like, oh, Mac, I'm so proud of you. You know, I just lived through you. You could actually live through your own experiences, but we make choices. A lot of people will say, I don't have a choice. Actually, you do. You know, not to get too biblical, but, you know, God has the plan for us, right? He knows the beginning and the end, but he gives us the freedom of choice. And when you choose to stay in what you're in, that's your choice. You can leave and experience the unknown, or you can stay in the mess that you're comfortable in. A lot of people say, like, you know, they're, what's the term? Basically, when you're stick to the poison, you know, or what it's something I can't remember, something like that. But it's like, actually, I don't like poison. So no. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a really good point. You're so right. Like, for some, we know the pain. We know when you get almost numbed to the pain, right?
Exactly.
And then you're literally just existing.
Exactly.
And so for you, you make the decision to leave. How have you been able to, through all of the things that you've been doing, you have such a positivity, even with all the challenges, the health challenges. How do you maintain such a positive attitude through it all?
I think 2 things. One was that when my sister passed away in 2012, I went through a severe depression. My entire family did, because she was like the glue of the family. She was the hub. She's the eldest, and everyone went through this downward spiral. It's like we were in a depression together. And I decided to start opening up about how I feel. And I just started being open about it. And me being open led me to start digging into what types of things I could do to actually heal. And speaking about it was one of them. And that's when I actually got into personal development, because I was trying to heal myself. I wanted to do the work so that I could heal, because I didn't like the pain. I was choosing not to choose the pain. And in that season, I had people that were reaching out to me left, right, and center, because at the time I was selling real estate. My phone number was on the internet, and people were reaching out to me to say, you know, whether it was through email, phone call, social media, they wanted to let me know the difference that my sister made in their life. and they wanted to let me know how she impacted them. They wanted to let me know how much she meant to them. And that kind of was my aha moment, like, okay, she wasn't just the world to me. She meant the world to a lot of people. And when they started to explain the things that she was doing for them, it was such simple things, but it was acts of love. You know, a lot of people have family that don't support their entrepreneurship journey. She would show up to their launch. She would help them set up for things. A lot of people felt like they had no one they could talk to. She would sit and just listen to them on the phone. She would send them motivational videos from YouTube at 2:00 in the morning. She would post scriptures online. Like, she just constantly put out light that made other people feel good. And learning a lot of what she was doing and then studying personal development about the things that I could do to change myself and how I could actually make other people feel and leave a legacy, and making it so much bigger than just about me. Because when I was sitting in my own pain, it was about me. And when I started to heal and look at, okay, what was the impact that she was having? What legacy do I want to have? How can I make that impact? How can I make other people feel good? It was just like, okay. So when things, all the obstacles start to happen and all these adversities come and it feels like life's throwing these tennis balls at my head and I'm trying to dodge them. Okay, it's not just about me. It's not just about me. Okay, there's a bigger picture. At first, the bigger picture was my kids. And I realized it's way bigger than just my kids. So putting certain things into practice to keep me on a positive mindset, I've learned through my mentors, like simple things that people take for granted. Practicing gratitude. I mean, we can all be grateful, but actively practicing gratitude. So I have a gratitude journal, and I had ended up through the inspiration from my mentor, creating my own gratitude journal to help other people. And every single day I sit down and I write in my gratitude journal the 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. But it's not just, I'm going to say superficial gratitude. It's actually the feeling. How does this make me feel? Like if I said, I'm grateful for Sandra. Why am I grateful for Sandra? How do I feel? Allowing me to tap into that. Practicing affirmations. A lot of people, again, on a superficial level, will say that they practice affirmations. They're saying positive things. Okay, but are you actually trying to believe in what you're saying? Because it's attaching the feeling and internalizing that belief that actually helps you to manifest what it is that you want. Just having a series of things in place, especially when it comes to my children. I feel like sometimes my weakness is lack of patience. And I find in my household, my children will challenge all of my weaknesses so that it makes me think that I'm not doing great things out in the world. But it's learning every single day to accept the challenges that come, especially inside my household, learning to be patient, learning to show more compassion to them and myself. Because oftentimes when you're in a position where you're outside serving, the whole world sees you doing all these great things, but some people are actually not very nice people inside of their home to their family. Because you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, you're taking it out on the people closest to you. So it's practicing on a daily basis on how to implement all of these things.
So you talked about your gratitude journal, and I just wanted to ask you this question about, so you have the gratitude journal and you have the gratitude journal for couples, which I thought was really interesting concept. What made you think about doing a couples gratitude journal?
So the inspiration from that came from my partner. When we met, every day he saw me writing in my gratitude journal. And one day he just said, have you ever thought about doing one for couples?
Was he doing his own gratitude journal before?
No.
Oh, so he was inspired seeing you.
Yes. And he saw me writing in my journal. And when he asked me if I'd ever considered doing one for couples, I looked at him and said, nope. And we laughed about it. And he's like, well, I think you should. And I was like, maybe you should. You know, God gave you that vision, not me. And he's like, no, we could do it together. And funny enough, it was in a real short period of time. I believe it was probably maybe the beginning of January when he mentioned that. And I thought, okay. And he said, well, if you start now, you can have it out in time for Valentine's. And I thought, do I look like Superwoman to you? You want me to publish a couple's gratitude journal in less than a month? And he's like, yeah, I believe in you. You could do it. He's like, I'll help you. So we sat within a week, we came up with the quotes, we came up with the format, we came up with everything that we wanted in it. And we reached out to the graphic designer, we put it together, and we had it launched in time for Valentine's.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what has been the feedback from couples about the journal, the couples journal?
I've had amazing feedback from a lot of couples, some that I didn't expect to actually use it. I've had some influential couples say that it's forced them to practice gratitude together. It's forced them to practice their gratitude for each other together. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes when you're in a relationship with someone and especially if it's been a long time, you're so used to going through the motions, and sometimes you forget to focus on each other. But it's actually getting you to consciously every single day to think about why you're grateful for your partner. What is it that they do that you love? What are their strengths? Because a lot of people unintentionally will focus on someone's weakness, especially if you're with them for a long time, right? You know, they're doing something that highly annoys you or gets on your last nerve. But if you're not always focusing on the negative and you're focusing on their strengths, then you feel more of a connection to them because you're going to start to show that you appreciate them, right?
Yeah. Now, you've got the 2 gratitude journals, gratitude journal for you individually, gratitude journal for couples, but you have other books that you've written. So let's talk about those. Tell me about the first book that you wrote.
Okay, so the very first book, A Walk in My Stilettos, How to Get Through the Struggle with Grace, that actually came about after my sister passed away. And I was actually going through support groups sharing my story. And other women were like, wow, how are you still able to be so positive? And a lot of the stories that I would share, they're like, wow, that's real. That actually happened. And instead of continuing to share my story one-to-one, I was like, how can I share this one-to-many? And I had so many people say, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And in my head at the time, I didn't believe it was possible. And it wasn't until I did where it actually came to life. But it's a self-help book. It's based on my testimony, but it's got tips and tools to help you get through what it is that you're going through. And although I talk about, you know, the teen motherhood, although I talk about the divorce, you know, the loss of my sister, all those things, it's helped other people. I always get excited when I get the feedback from men that read it.
That's an interesting title for a man to pick up, right?
I've actually had a few men will message me and say, oh my God, I'm reading your book. I've actually had to hide it between a newspaper when I'm on the subway or between another book when I'm at work because the original version had a stiletto on the front. So it's been republished and we changed it to a different cover, but it's funny. Yeah. But they get so many different lessons from it as well. In terms of relationship, in terms of persevering, there's so many different things that you can get from that. And then after that was published.
And why did you decide to call it A Walk in My Stilettos?
So because it was based on my testimony, originally I was going to call it A Walk in My Shoes. And I was selling real estate full time at the time, but my branding was all based around stilettos. I was known as a stiletto girl in real estate. And every open house I would come in, some of the regulars would come in and say, oh, what stilettos is she wearing this time? Or I would post on social media what stilettos I'm wearing while I'm going out doing showings. So I was known as that stiletto girl. And I thought, okay, how can I personalize A Walk in My Shoes? And it became A Walk in My Stilettos. And I started to find different meanings for heels and stilettos. And I started to look into how it actually made people feel, how it uplifted them, how it forced them to walk purposefully, all the different things. It wasn't just the superficial. So that's how that name came about. And then shortly after, the feedback from people reading that book, people were reaching out saying, okay, I want to know, again, how are you still able to be so positive after experiencing so much trauma? And I said, prayer and affirmations. And they wanted to know what affirmations. So the second book ended up being 111 Affirmations to Help You Heal, which was an extension of A Walk in My Stilettos. And
why 111?
I felt like 101 was just cliche. No other main reason behind that at all.
Okay.
So it was just the affirmations that I was using that helped me heal. And I was able to publish that within, it was, again, less than a month to put that out there. And yeah, so those are the other two.
So is there another book in the works?
So there's actually a fifth book that I recently wrote a chapter in, a compilation book. It's called Ain't No Plan B. There's a publisher in Illinois who was putting together stories of other female entrepreneurs that had gone through other adversities, and that came out in October. So that's number 5. And there are so many books inside of me right now. It's just to find the time to sit and write them.
Because of course you're busy with, you do your coaching, you have all these programs, and you have a podcast, a weekly podcast. Tell me about the weekly podcast and what the intent is or the purpose is.
So the podcast is an extension of the book. Because of the feedback that I got from sharing my story, and people actually, their messages said that they related to the adversities. They didn't feel alone. A lot of people were like, oh my God, did you have a camera on me? This is my life. So them being able to relate to that and get tools from that, I thought, how can I help them even further see that we are all connected in some way, shape, or form? And there was a book signing that I did actually in South Africa, and I wasn't sure what to expect, how many people were going to be there. And when I got there, they actually, in that moment after I got there, said they wanted me to speak. And I thought, that's very different from a book signing. I wasn't prepared for this. And I was actually having a flare up from my fibromyalgia. So I was like, okay, this is too much for me. So what I ended up doing was asking everyone in the room to take 3 to 5 minutes and share their story. And every single person in the room, no matter what age they were, no matter what sex they were, there was something in their story that we could relate to. So that said to me, there's something further I can do with my story. So the podcast is the stories, the testimonies of other powerful women that have gone through adversities. And it's just showing that we're all connected in some way. There's something that we can take from everyone's story that we can relate to, whether we're men, women, doesn't matter.
So true. Now let's talk about the work that you do with coaching. So you talked about mindset. Explain what that is, because it's a term that we hear thrown around so much nowadays. Mindset. What does it mean in your world and in your context?
So even with the word mindset, people have a set way of thinking. And it's getting you to actually open up your mind and to look at different perspectives, to tap into understanding how we think, why we think that way, and changing that. A lot of, like I said before, a lot of what we know, we actually need to unlearn to relearn the correct way. So there's so many simple habits that we do on a daily basis that affect our results in life. And a lot of people don't understand that it's the simple things that can change your life. Something as simple as changing what time you get up in the morning. Something as simple as changing what you do first thing in the morning. It's all of those simple habits, understanding how that as a whole affects the results that you get. So when it comes to mindset coaching, no matter what it is that you want to do in life, no matter what your objective is, and whether it's personal development or business, you tell me what it is that you want, and we actually first have to sit down and help you visualize that. But once we determine what it is that you want, I can show you how to get it by changing your habits.
What are some of the habits that for you do do you have a morning routine or some sort of, what do you do?
In terms of morning routine, let's just say that I have never been a morning person. So that is one habit I would like to change. And I'm still working on it. But when I do wake up in the morning, there's a lot of things I refuse to do. Don't call me before 9 a.m. In terms of habits, that's like my downtime with meditating, with being at peace, with being present with my children, with driving my son to school, all of those things. In the morning is when I do my gratitude practice. In the morning is when I do my affirmations. In the morning is when I listen to motivational videos while I'm doing my makeup. All of those simple practices help set my mind for the day. Because the second that, our bodies and our minds have more power than an actual computer, that electricity. So the second that you allow a negative thought to enter, it can change the entire frequency into a negative vibration. So starting with the positivity helps me continue that positivity throughout the day. And then when something negative happens, I can choose to accept or reject it and keep it moving.
Now, you're incredibly inspiring, just hearing your story now and what you've overcome, and also just seeing how you move through the world and seeing how you interact with other people has truly, for me, been inspiring. And I want to know, who are some people who inspire you?
First, I would say my mentor, Bob Proctor. Bob is, I think he's like turning 89 or something like that.
He is?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's not young. I mean, he's been in personal development for almost 60 years, right? And he has so much energy and his heart to give. I had the pleasure of being mentored by his wife, his daughter, and himself for almost a year, hands-on, like in their home, seeing them every week. They are the most loving, giving people I've ever met in my entire life. And a lot of people assume when someone has money or they reach a certain level that they're not, but they are the perfect example of servant leadership. He's very big on energy. And if there's anyone that I can think of that is fully tapped into their, I'm going to say their mental faculties, their intuitive abilities, their mental awareness, it's Bob. He can sit in your presence and read the energy that you're giving off. And he's done it to me so many times that it scared the crap out of me. But he just inspires me by how he interacts with people. He inspires me by, even at his age, he could retire if he wanted to. He has enough money to do so. But every single day he wakes up and says, like, how can I serve today? How can I help you be a greater person? That inspires me. That makes me want to do the same thing. So he would be the number one person. Did you ask me to?
No, I said name as many as you want. Yeah.
Aside from Bob, I'm actually inspired by women like yourself and Vivian. I feel like, especially as women of color, we see a lot of environments and toxic, I'm going to say, energy put out where we're not willing to share, not willing to support, not willing to do all those things. So the stuff that you do with interviewing other women, the stuff that you do with highlighting what other women are doing, even you asking me about my podcast, on your podcast, stuff like that inspires me.
Yes, it's just because not because you know this is how one of the very first time I ever made, I was kind of like, I really like your podcast because it's really good. It is really good, and I listened to it, and I'm like, I text like, oh my gosh, yeah, so and so is so amazing, like, and I truly love your podcast. I think you do such a phenomenal job. Like there was the lady that you had recently, the real estate one, who's managed to buy all her own. I'm like, wow. All right, take some notes.
Young. She's in her early 20s, right? And she's a new multimillionaire. Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, why wouldn't we want to share those stories, right? You know. So anyway, I digress. But yes, you have a great podcast. Listen to her podcast.
Thank you.
I know where we're going with this.
Yes. So women like yourself and Vivian Kay, like her energy from the very first time I met her. The very first time I met her in person was at another women's empowerment event, and there's just something about her that's infectious, and it inspires you to be on a higher vibration. You can't be miserable around Vivian. It's impossible. Like I've tried. So that inspires me.
That's so true. Yeah. That's so true. And one of the other things too, so you're a coach, you have a podcast, you're a mom, but you're also a speaker. So tell me about the speaking and how that came about. Because I know that you're naturally quite a shy person.
I'm very introverted. Shh, don't tell anybody. So in terms of even the speaking, all of that was not something I intended to do. It's allowing God to do what he wants to do with me. Because when I wrote the first book, originally it was published with a different publisher. And right before launch, she says, well, I need to connect you with a speaking coach. And I said, for what? And she said, because you need to go out there and talk about your book. And I said, well, can't we hire somebody else to do that? And she's like, no, it's your story. Who can tell your story better than you? And I'm thinking, well, I could train
Speaking
somebody.
on behalf of Makini.
I was like, really? Is that how this works? So I had to go and I did Toastmasters. I had to, go to other public speaking universities and courses to learn to actually speak in public, because my fear of speaking and my fear of being in a room of more than 10 people, like all of those things came into play and I had to overcome those. So I didn't plan on becoming a speaker. And then once I put it out there that I was speaking and taking, having photos on social media of me speaking on stages, it was like the floodgates opened up. Like till this day, I've never pitched myself for a speaking engagement, like ever. Everything that's ever come to me has been them requesting me. And sometimes I'm like, are you sure you want me to speak? You should have
the right number.
I've responded to some emails saying, really, what is it that you want me to speak about? Like, I think you have the wrong person here. But I'd never intended to be a public speaker. And it was just me being open about my story and wanting to help other people share theirs, where it just created a life of its own where I've been asked to speak. I always have to remind people, especially when they see me on stage, because there are sometimes people that expect this, they expect the Vivian K personality out of me if they follow me on social media.
Right.
But I am so introverted and naturally very mellow that they're like, oh, you're kind of quiet. And if it's not perceived right from the right person, it's actually come back to me like, oh, she's stuck up because I'm too quiet, and they assume that I'm being standoffish. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm still working on.
Okay, so you've worked through a lot of things. You've overcome. Your strength is your resilience. Is what are you most proud of yourself about?
In terms of myself or what I've done?
However you want to define it.
I would have to say that I am most proud of owning my own voice. Before my sister passed, she was my voice. If I had to return something at a store, I was too afraid to do so. She would either have to do it for me or come with me, and she would do the talking. If I didn't like something that my mother was doing or said or wanted me to do, I wouldn't say it. My sister would. My mom would actually call her my lawyer. Like, she's like, what is she, a lawyer? You can't speak for yourself? I didn't know how to use my own voice. I was afraid to use my own voice. And you know, they say everything happens for a reason. And at first I was very angry and didn't understand why my sister is no longer with us physically. But losing her forced me to find my own voice. And in turn, it's also helped me to help other women find theirs. And having a platform like the podcast or using social media, it's being a voice for other women, because I have women that come into my DMs with questions or concerns or life issues that they don't know how to deal with. And I'll publicly share the answer to that or the solution for that. So I think I'm most proud of that.
And what do you want? So you have beautiful children. What do you want them to know about you?
That I'm a human being? No. My kids think I'm like super mom. Sometimes I'm like, seriously? Yeah. I think because my kids see what I do outside, and since soon as I became an entrepreneur, because I was a single mom, I brought them with me to a lot of things. So they saw things firsthand. And behind the scenes, they see everything that I do, but sometimes they think like, mom's superhuman. She's not a real person. It's not until recently where they've actually seen me cry. So I think they think I'm not human, that I don't have feelings. So if there's anything I want them to know about me, it's, yeah, I have feelings.
What's your greatest dream for yourself?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. The greatest dream for myself, I want to be able to make a huge impact globally. I want to be like the Deepak Chopras. I want to be like the Lisa Nichols. I want to be like the Bob Proctors, where there's a legacy of them impacting and changing lives for the better.
And you can do it.
Yeah.
You absolutely can do it. Like, I see that.
Can I do it from behind the scenes? I'm joking. That was a joke.
You're the spokesperson. And what are you most excited about right now?
Right now, what am I most excited about? If I had to explain, 2019, I was dragged. I feel like I was dragged through the year. I struggled with issues with my health. I struggled with so many issues that it felt like every day I woke up trying not to be on pause because of everything that was happening. So, I've had a lot of people, when I share this with them personally, they're like, wow, I never would have known based on, if I looked at your social media, I would have assumed life's great. You didn't miss a beat. When I explain the actual health issues that I went through, or, my issues with anxiety of recently and all these things, are like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. So Yeah, I'm excited to start refreshed and rebooted. And that's what I'm excited about right now.
I could not ask you this, given you have 2 books on this subject. What are you grateful for? So I know, like you said, 2019 has been challenging. Mm-hmm. What are you grateful for about 2019?
I'm grateful for 2019 to be able to even see it, because tomorrow was promised to no one. And losing my sister taught me not to take things for granted, not to take the day for granted. So even though I feel like 2019, I've been dragged every single day, I still get up grateful that I even woke up. You know, looking forward to 2019 and being grateful for the opportunity to walk into it and to still be able to serve and to still be able to be an example of leadership, or be an example of overcoming adversity, or be an example of getting back up after being knocked down 42,000 times. So I'm grateful to have the community of women around me that also uplift me and give me hope for 2020.
I hear you about 2019. Like, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. All right. So this platform is called Ndini because in my mother tongue, Shona, the words Ndini means I am. And I believe in the power of you declaring your destiny and creating your destiny. You said powerful thing earlier about how the power of your thoughts and how you create with your mind. Tell me, or finish that sentence for me. I am.
I am a conqueror. I am resilient. I am persistent. I am a reflection of God's love.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. You are a reflection of a higher, I believe in God, but I like your energy just feels like it's a reflection of, I don't know, you exude something more than just the physical. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was telling you earlier that I'm doing my first live event. I called it Woman on Fire. And I'd love to know for you, when I say that, woman on fire, what does that mean to you? Or what is your definition of a woman on fire?
For me, a woman on fire is a woman living her passion. That fire inside of her is coming out on the outside, and you can see it visibly. A woman on fire is a woman walking in her purpose. A woman on fire is helping to be that candle, that matchstick that's lighting other candles.
I love that. I love that because it's so you. Of course you would define it that way. Lighting other people's candles, right? You're amazing. But you know I'm a fan already, so I'm just going to stop gushing. All right. You are such a delight.
Thank you.
Makini, you are truly I'm so glad I worked up the nerve that day to say, I like the podcast.
I'm so glad you did too. I honestly appreciate when people actually open up and say things. Because sometimes you'll see someone in public and they listen to the show or they read the book and they don't say anything, and then they message me later on Facebook or Instagram or something, and I'm like, why didn't you say anything? I want to thank you. I want to hug you. I know I'm introverted, but I love hugs.
Thank you. Thank you for making time to talk to me today. Thank you but more than making time today, I want to say thank you for who you are how you show up in the world. Because even for someone like me who, just met you recently, I know that you're making an impact. You're giving us permission to show up as ourselves. Because the more I watch you and I see you being you, I'm inspired by that. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. And I wish you well. I know 2019's been challenging. I know, but all will be well.
I believe so too. Yeah. I have a lot of work to do.
You're such a star. I just love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. Here's what I'd love to ask you as our community. So I want to know from you, who who do you want me to have on the show? Who would you like me to interview? Who are some of the amazing women whose stories you would like for us to share on this platform? If you have any fantastic ideas, and even better, if you can connect me with them, please comment, leave your comment, or DM me and tell me who are some incredible stories I should be sharing on this platform. And the other ask that I have of you is for you to subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and share. Please share. If you find any of our interviews inspiring, please share them with your friends and family.